which goes back to something else we talked about a little bit before when we were getting ready to come on air, that people tend to think of art, or maybe it's only me and I'm the only Philistine in the group, that you think of art as being that which is exhibited in major museums. And therefore, if you're old enough, you think of oil paintings and sculpture, and that's kind of the extent of it. But art, as you determine it, and you all made interesting comments, is really anything that provides some form of inspiration, appreciation. So you are talking about graphic art, you are talking about visual art.
We're talking about, we have an artist in the show, Todd Knopke, who works with fiber. We have a quilt in the show, and the imagery on the quilt is it's a still life scene, basically. But his process with that is he finds very high-end fabric, discards, and he stitches it together into this very recognizable image. But that's, again, not something you would think of with still life. Okay, again, you're thinking of painting or so. Here we're finding someone who's working in a completely different media. We also have some artists in the show who you really feel the influence of the other art forms, like sculpture or photography. We have an artist named David Goldis, and the finished product is a photograph, and the work is actually called After Cezanne. But what he does is he takes objects, especially fruit, and he molds them with metal, mesh. Okay, so he gets them set up, and then he extracts from the metal the object, and then he photographs the outline, the mesh. So what you're really seeing you're seeing two things. You're seeing a Cezanne painting in reference. He's basically set this scenario up like a Cezanne painting, but it's a completely different idea.
It's interesting, and Kevin made note of this as well, that we look back in art history, and I think when I was in school, my undergraduate, the second day in art history, came in and said, I'm an artist myself, and I never want to do anything that's been done before. And that is like the real high modernist statement. And when we went to school, we went through what's called postmodernism, that was looking back on the statement of originality and what is original and what is it that the high point of the Jackson Pollocks and the Mark Rothkos and the Helen Frankenthalers trying to be absolutely new in an art form. And a lot of that kind of fell on top of itself during the 70s and 80s. And I'm glad it did, because it, in a sense of that burden of being new all the time, is just, and it's still there. I mean, it's still, you know what I mean? Everything's got to be new. It's all about new. It's the culture of new. It always has been. Sneakers, have to be brand new. Where do they all go? By the way, where do all the sneakers that get a little dirt on them go? The kids are always walking around with brand new shoes.
Probably in the bottom of their closets.
Yeah. And I wear a size 11 and a half, so everybody's listening.
So if there's anyone who would like to send him shoes.
But the, anyway, it's just so the sense of new. So in my own work, and you can see with Kevin as well, and probably throughout the show, there's this kind of freedom to look back and take off. And it's not weakness. It was kind of seen like, oh, you can't be original, therefore, and then for myself, going back to still life was beautiful, because it was like the tawdry bottom of the barrel, like, how dare you do still life? And that was great, because there's plenty of room there. You weren't fighting to be really original and doing heroic works of art and never seen this before. It's still out there in the art discourse. And the art discourse is huge about unprecedented work and all this kind of thing, and it's still wanted out there. But there's a sense in still life currently that it's a place that you can use to, it's, like I said, kind of like an empty canvas. Say you can fill with a lot of different media. You can bring different things, and I think a lot of times it does have to do with media. It comes in, or mediums, or medias, whatever it is. That you can suddenly start doing some really crazy things with something that's already a visual, a trope that's already understood, like it's a still life. Okay, now we're free. Now we can go. We don't have to start figuring out if it's a political standpoint or like paintings that were done 15 years ago, 20 years ago during the Reagan era. They were really important paintings then, but they were about a political issue, and now they have this kind of dust on them from history already. And so oftentimes when we work with still life, we're working with something that's a trope that's age old, and it's not, it's already, it doesn't, by its very nature, doesn't have a lot of trapped in time quality to it. So
yeah, I'd say it's I wouldn't want to discount newness entirely. I mean, you have to, there has to be innovation, there has to be new developments. You have to live in your own time, but at the same time, to chase that, kind of fetishistically, and to think about that as the key issue, the key thing that defines the value of your art's not such a good idea. And like Scott was saying too, sometimes if I don't know, to have a structure to work within kind of sets you free.
Yeah.
Like, you have to paint some objects, some non-living objects you arranged on a table. Okay, keep coming up with variations on that, and sometimes you'll get something there that's that is kind of surprising and new. Sometimes a little bit of restriction sets you free.
Well, you mentioned Elizabeth. You mentioned Andy Warhol before, and of course I was in my youth at that point, and the fact that the Campbell Soup can, which is the iconic Andy Warhol, that's a still life, but it used a different approach and a different medium. It was what people, like a poster, but it was a whole new approach to art.
Yeah, it was also being seen by a different audience, and a lot of what we were growing up in the modernist, ethos was there was the new, but who was looking at the new? Who was declaring things new? And with the global, issues coming up and suddenly media going out and things were being known all over the places, much more globally in a sense, that the people who were making the judgments were suddenly being caught into question. And so this, I think a lot of artists were growing during the period realizing it's new for me in the studio. And that's okay, and that was being validated. So in other words, if you were making a brushstroke that maybe had been done thousands of times before with the same agenda, with the same color, with the same whatever, it was new for you. But we grew up during a period was no, you have to look in the art books and you have to understand what's been done before, and you have to be new, and it, so still the studio really counts more and more, and that kind of real connection with your work and solidity of that effort in the studio gets seen by sensitive curators like Ms. Saperstein, is able to look at that and say, there's someone who's taking an age-old, the old still life routine, but bringing something fresh to it. Because there are thousands and thousands and thousands of still life paintings painted each day by new people to the arts who come in with a brush, and the first thing they do is paint a still life, because that's what we teach, is in painting, is that still life, because it is empty. It doesn't really have, you're not going to tell them to start painting a historical painting when you've never painted before. So,
The vegetables in the bottles are usually pretty cooperative models. They don't move around. They don't need smoke breaks and things like that.
We're going to come back and have more conversations about art with my friends from the Pelham Art Center, Elizabeth Saperstein, and artists Kevin Klein and Scott Seaboldt. If you'd like to join the conversation when we come back from news and announcements, you can call us at 914-636-0110. We'll be back whether you're listening on AM or worldwide or on VIP HD.